I'd like to introduce a special guest we have this morning. Guests, there's actually two of them. Representative Matt Erpelding is, I'm proud to say, my legislator from District 19. And I have to say about Representative Erpelding, he is one of the most tenacious, honest, and principled people I have ever met. He's also the minority leader and the youngest legislator in the Democratic caucus and almost one of the youngest legislators on the Republican side also. So he's very young, and he was the driving force to get the $2 million for the Child Pedestrian Safety Project money. So I'd like Matt to come up with Louise, his beautiful daughter. I'd like to have him come up and tell his story.
It's an honor to be called young. I'm 43, and I probably am the 5th or 6th youngest member of the legislature. And I think that that's a telling sign for Idaho, and it's one of our biggest challenges, because I'll hear people and they'll say, well, when I was in elementary school, and I'm like running numbers in my head, and I'm thinking, that was in the 50s. Things are different now. So it's an interesting challenge to be inside of the legislature. So like Cynthia said, my name is Representative Matt Erpelding. This is Louise. The lifestyle that I have right now is that my wife is the breadwinner because I'm in the legislature, and I'm a stay-at-home dad when the legislature is not in session. And so I have her all the time. Yeah, there's a host of personal challenges that come with that. But I wanted to tell you my story and why I think that this organization was so critical to having particularly Cynthia in the legislature 4 years ago. I grew up in Colorado, and in fact, in 1986, did the very first Iron Kids triathlon in Colorado. And the reason that I was able to do that is because Colorado, even in the 80s, had the foresight enough to build enough bike paths that my family could ride from our house close to the foothills or the hogback all the way into downtown Denver without ever being on a road. And the reason that that was valuable is because my family didn't have a lot of money, but my parents liked to put us on bikes because I was difficult to manage. And as a result of that, ultimately I came to Idaho State to run cross country and track. But I had transferred out of ISU. I was leaving ISU and going back to Colorado. And one day I walked into a performance bike shop. We have one here in Boise now over in the mall area. Yeah. And I walked in and I bought panniers and I bought racks, and I decided not to transfer to Colorado, and I rode my bike back to Idaho. And since then, I've ridden Idaho from Canada all the way to Jackpot, and I can tell you where the unsafe stretches of roads are for a cyclist in this state. But I can also tell you that I think the future of our economy, and I think that the future of a livable state is multimodal transportation on every level. So that includes public transportation, that includes pedestrian routes, that includes access to bike lanes. But as we increasingly densify in Boise City, we will see this continues to be a bigger challenge. Can you say dad? Okay. So I want to talk about how hard it is in the legislature to actually get them to view the world through a multimodal lens. It's extraordinary to me that 4 years ago when we had the conference committee, that all I was asking for was $2 million of a $250 million budget to get bike lanes, crosswalks, bridges over highways, things that would improve the safety of just our kids getting to school, let alone the economic vitality of our communities because we have linked communities for other forms of transportation. I couldn't get them to put it in the bill. I could not get them to put it in the bill. So what I did in order to get my caucus to vote for it, and in the end, I don't think we should have voted for it. It was that bad of a situation. I got Brian Ness, the assistant majority leader, and another person to write letters promising us that they would put $2 million into safe routes to schools. 2 years later, they still had refused to do it. And they had hundreds of reasons why they couldn't do it. First, they said it was the Constitution, because the Constitution can only be used, money from gas can only be used for roads that cars are on, not for the whole concept, the whole kit and caboodle. And when I said, well, if you're building a new road, couldn't you put a sidewalk in next to it? Well, yeah, but if we put a separated one, the easements and everything else that goes with it. So initially, we tried to get a transfer tax, because the transfer tax occurs before you actually get to the gas station. And the farmers flipped out over it. And so, of course, that was dead in the water. So 2 years later, we come down the pipe with another transportation bill and more money for expansion and maintenance. And this time I went to the governor's office, showed him the letters from Brian Ness, showed him the letter from Representative Crane, and basically said, these guys are not trustworthy. They didn't hold their end of the bargain in the first place. I don't understand how we could possibly go with you on this issue now. And the governor's office didn't know about the letters, was completely taken back that these things even existed, and they immediately changed course. Which tells you honestly that I think, which tells you honestly that I think that Governor Otter he's had an influence on this. He is the one that turned the corner when he realized that promises had been made and promises weren't kept. But the reality is that that body, that legislature, still does not see the value in multimodal bike lanes and other forms of transportation, because we can't get them to move on it. And so your involvement, your willingness to step up and be down there, whether it's the 2 commissioners from the ACHD, whether it's Cynthia advocating for the Safe Routes to School fund, that's the only way we're going to do it. And then the only other way to do it is to elect younger people. Sorry. No, I mean, there are really great members of the body who recognize the importance of it. But if you're viewing everything from back in my day and you refuse to see that the future is changing, you won't recognize the importance of multimodal transportation, which is why public transit struggles, which is why bike lanes struggle. And so when I say younger, I don't mean 43. I mean people who think about the future and look forward to changes. And so with that, it's an honor to be here, Cynthia. Thank you. And we're going to go push the stroller in safe places like on the Greenbelt right now. So thank you.